They might be self-aware.
Hunter, if I was to ask you to Google like a technical problem, like you're using a Python Flask microservice and there's a specific cores middleware problem that you're running into, like just technical
80% of our listeners just dropped.
Well, right. No, so the point, everyone stay with me, I promise I'm going somewhere with this. You have this like weird deep technical problem and it's like arcane stuff. How do you Google that? Google
what
specifically.
What is a Google these days?
I know. I've
kind of
completely forgotten who Google is. I don't know the last time I went to google.com and entered in a search, as an aside. I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine the other day about Google, and I told him that
I am actually not sure, but let's just go with it.
Okay.
I told him the main thing that I use Google for these days is to look at menus. When I need a restaurant menu, that's 90% of when I go to Google. I'm looking up a menu. I want to see the menu.
It to be directed to Stack Overflow for programming problems. That's what Google is for me at this point.
Yeah, I almost never use Stack Overflow these days, like the large language model. But I'll go back to your question though. Yeah. How do you identify the most relevant keywords and you type those in with a little bit of your question at the end?
Python Flask cores error.
If you have an error, if you have the error 516, you put that in and then in quotes.
Yep.
That's usually a good way. But yeah, it's this kind of like convoluted language of keywords that you figured out. Maybe there's some site tags, right? I want to filter on just return results from this domain.
Yeah. Yep.
It's archaic.
It is literally archaic. And I was using so Visual Studio Code. It is a program that I do my coding in. There's an extension that you can plug into that called Cline. Cline is amazing.
With a C.
It helps with a C. Helps me do all of my programming now. I mean, it's utterly incredible, and it's hooked up by default to Anthropic's Claude large language model to have its smarts. The way that I talk to it is not like I talk to Google. I don't say, here is error, 5 keywords, solve, go. I absolutely talk to it, whatever I'm typing to it, as if I were typing a message to somebody on like Discord or not email. It's definitely not formal like an email would be. It's like a text or a Discord message or Slack or whatever. Hey, I got this problem and here's like a screenshot of my debugging session, and I've been up against the wall with cores stuff. I don't understand this. I straight up don't understand it. I know you know it better than I do. Please help. I am open to suggestions. And like if you talk to it like you talk to a person, you get better results. Straight up better results. Frankly, Cline via Claude is incredible, where I could just be like, error 5 keywords, go, and it would get it. It would. But it does better when I say, look, I'm not a front-end developer. I have this like front-end thing. It's made in React. You made it actually earlier. I don't know React. You do. Thanks, by the way. And it needs to talk to my back-end server, and the back-end server can't talk to the front end for some reason. I literally don't understand it. It keeps saying cores, and I don't think it means the beer. What is going on? And then, bam, problem becomes solved. And it's incredible. And we were talking on our last episode of like, what is that sort of method of communication to an AI? And I really think that as much as media, so many of these articles that we talk about on this show do seem to be painting AI as like this thing to be sort of afraid of. I am truly trying to embrace just treat it like a person and you will have better results. There are still the ethical implications of like a lot of the data that they come from is copywritten and so on and so forth, and the possible loss or non-creation of jobs. All of those problems absolutely still stand. But if you as a user of the thing want the best results, just talk to it like it's a person.
I agree. also now, and I guess this is fairly human like too, it's not uncommon for me to just take a screenshot of the error that I'm having. And I
started doing that too. Yeah.
And then I just drag it into the ChatGPT desktop app and I say, how can I fix this?
Yeah. Which I think, 4 months ago wouldn't have been reasonable and doable, let alone a year ago. But right, literally yesterday was the first day that I started doing that. I was running into some front-end problems. I am not a front-end developer. For those of you not that know, a front-end developer is the person who makes the actual website bit that you look at. I don't know any of that stuff. If it's something worth looking at, I've never done it in my whole career. I just make the stuff that feeds into the stuff you look at. And so Claude, the large language model via Cline in VS Code, has made a front end for a website for me. Absolutely astonishing. I was running into a bug, which, like, in fairness, I don't know front end. So, like, the fact that it's got some bugs, yeah, of course it does. Hey, here is a copy of the error. Here's what we were last working on. Here is a screenshot of the thing. Do you know what's going on? Oh, yup. Doop, doop, doop. Done. And like, it just fixed it. It fixed the problem. It's not worth saying what the problem was. Just there was some problem with like CSS, which again, I don't know. And it fixed it. It just, oh, I found the file. Here's where the problem is. Let me reload it. And then not only did it reload the thing, like make the changes, this tool has, via Claude, the ability to use computers. We've talked a little bit about this some episodes ago.
Right. It found really and subscribed to our podcast.
I've started using
Apparently it's
that.
a fan.
Yes. I've actually started using that to the point where it opened up a web browser. Oh, yup. Here's that thing. I can confirm that the stuff that I just made is showing up the way that it's supposed to. You're welcome. And my jaw just clunk, like cartoon style, just unhinges, hits the floor. And I probably would have still gotten there if I gave the like Google style keywords, but it's so much easier to interact with it as if it's like some other programmer that I'm talking to in a different room somewhere.
Yeah. I was working with another engineer, and we were pair programming on a thing. And pair programming is where you're two people are looking at the same screen, and you're kind of trying to figure out the problem together. There's more to it than that, but you're both trying to figure out the solution together. And anyways, we were doing this thing integrating with text messaging so that it could send and receive text messages and respond to them using a service called Telnix. And we couldn't figure out some of the configuration. And he just brought up Cline and said, "Hey, Cline, please configure this for it." And literally went to the website and it's like, "Oh no, put this, change this setting here, change this setting there, and here's what you should do." And so it is becoming more and more commonplace. It wasn't one of our predictions for 2025. Maybe it should have been of something that's going to take over, because all of the large AI companies are bringing their offering about Microsoft, Google, OpenAI, Anthropic, Claude. They have this mode where they can take over your computer and control your computer. And it's seen a little bit like the last mile problem. How do you teach the AI to kind of do anything on the computer? Just give it control of the computer.
Right. I've talked a lot about embodiment of AI.
Yeah.
I guess this is that intermediate step where we say, okay, we're not giving it an arm to go chop your vegetables in your kitchen, but we will give it the ability to go and do stuff on your computer. And I think one of the big, a family member of mine ran into this over the holidays. They tried to use ChatGPT to say, like, what is a good price for this flight from here to here? And it can say, I don't know, historically it's been about this, but like ChatGPT can't do research. It can start to do some Googling, but especially for like airlines, they don't just make all of their charts available online. You'd have to like go to the site, probably have to log in, do a bunch of specific manual searches, and then like, okay, I looked up 10 separate flights on like these different weeks. It usually ranges from this to this. And it can't do that until we say, hey, here's the computer, go nuts, go do some research. And so like we are starting to get to the point where not research like scholarly research, but like I want to look online for the best petting zoo in the within 50 miles of this one location. What, you know, it's something, whatever. I think that it will have an approximate understanding of a lot of things right now. That's the whole point. LLMs they've been exposed to the whole friggin' internet. But to say, kind of knowing a lot about stuff already and being able to do research, which is also a computer that is designed to act like a person, now being forced to interact with Google like we interact with Google in a different. So this is like some weird 3 steps away from human kind of thing. But I think that it can do that kind of interacting. And I'm very curious to see where that is 6 months from now. It'll help with cheating on essays at like the graduate level a lot easier, because they'll be able to do the research and build out your bibliography for you.
Yeah. I mean, you can already do that pretty compelling with something like Perplexity. And I guess
this is where we get the Nobel Prize for an AI, though. Not for working in AI. It's the AI getting one, because it will be able to do research. I went online and I watched 10 YouTube tutorials or videos of like presentations by this one famous researcher. Then I found all of his body of work. Then I saw this is what I would do as a next experiment. Then I just did that. Like, woo! We're right there. We're oh so very close to an AI just doing that.
I know Google's Gemini has a new thing I haven't tried it yet called Deep Research, which attempts to do that, where it'll actually go out. So it uses the chain of thought reasoning on research tasks to basically exactly what you just said, to identify, okay, what should I try to do? It will go find the 10 YouTube videos that are about this topic. It will watch them all. By watch them all, it's going to download the audio and transcribe the audio. I guess potentially look at the video as well, figure out all the salient points, compile things together, read other material online to come back and form an opinion about something or to write a paper about it. But you can try that today. It's called Deep Research. I have not personally tried it yet, but it does look really cool.
Maybe we should
I'm behind
do
on
some
the Google tech.
Deep research on it, Hunter.
Yes, we could.
Come on, that was pretty good.
It was excellent.
Thank you.
I was, we started this conversation off talking about, Google, it doesn't have a future, and how we just aren't using it anymore. And I think that's
I will do like early stages of research for it. And I guess like, I need to find this one company's website. That's what Google is used for at this point. I type in the name of the company. I find
it's a directory. It's going back to like Yahoo used to be a directory. It's the yellow pages.
Right.
I need the menu. I need to give me the address.
It is definitely becoming much more the yellow pages than it is like the research tool or what have you.
Yeah. So on average, something like a ChatGPT or a Claude is far superior to Google for the average thing that you're looking for to try to find, the answer to.
Yeah, unless you want facts. And we've talked plenty about, there's hallucinations and so on, but especially for these things that could do their own Googling and then use that as like the grounding for the answer. Yeah, maybe that's going the way of the dinosaur, especially if you're trying to look up facts about dinosaurs, which as the parent of a almost 3-year-old, I'm often looking up facts about dinosaurs.
A common task.
Yeah.
Google was also really behind in the beginning on this modern renaissance of AI and large language models. We both saw some of their early demos as they were trying to sell us on their platform, and it was horrible in comparison to the competitors.
I mean, still very technically impressive, but not as impressive as
it was horrible
what was
compared
already
to their
out
competitors. There. And you would ask them, well, like, how does this compare? And they'd be like, well, we don't really look at that. But
we tend not to put GPT-4o on the same benchmark slide for some reason.
There was no comparison, and it was more expensive. Didn't do what you needed to do, and it was more expensive. Right. So they fell behind a little bit. But there's two things. So first, they seem to be rapidly catching up, if not have caught up now in terms of the underlying technology. Their large language models are super solid. They've started to ship really cool, innovative products. Their video model is supposedly incredible, although we're still on the wait list for that. We're not allowed to see it, but it supposedly is incredible. Allegedly, but they haven't yet fixed search. Search is still caught. They did their experiments with recommending you put glue on your pizza, and it failed sort of miserably.
Those are still out there. I still see the AI overviews, and they're not as bad as they used to be, but I'm also not searching for glue on pizza, so maybe it isn't better.
They're talking about introducing an AI mode into search, and I don't really know what that is. I imagine it would be something like, oh, you can just talk to it like a chat GPT and switch back and forth between normal search results. That would kind of make sense. Right. But their search is still sort of broken in the modern era. But I wonder if is it really just broken for us, the folks that are somewhat on the edge of technology, and for the average person, like Google's still great. They still love Google as a search engine. If you're mostly using
Google to find Facebook.com, which I've seen plenty of people just Google the word Facebook.
They're researching things and looking for all the stuff that it's different material, but they're interested in gardening, and they're looking up plants and how to fix this and how should they lay out their garden, what's the optimal sun angle and all these things. I'd imagine they're going to something like Google and looking for it, and I wouldn't be surprised to learn that they're just as satisfied as they always were. I know there's a lot of ads and a lot of sponsored posts, but that they haven't really started moving off the platform in the way that we have started moving off the platform. And so I wonder whether most people are still happy with it, and then I wonder, are we going to go back to Google when the technology gets good enough? And it's on a trajectory to get good enough. It's very plausible that they're going to come back and Google's going to be like the place to go. Like, well, why would you go to ChatGPT or Claude to ask your question? Just go to Google, right? And switch over that AI mode. You want
just ChatGPT with Google. Yeah. It's like the just Google with Bing. Along those lines, one mode of Googling that I've done a lot of in the past is trying to get past Reddit's absolutely god-awful search function. If I'm like, I want to see what other people on the internet have thought about this particular kind of thing, or if anyone's had this kind of problem that isn't like a programming problem where I'd be going to Stack Overflow instead. Yeah. Just there's stuff that I'd want to ask the internet, people sort of in general, and rather than getting a microphone and going on the street, what do you think about blank? And getting their answers that way, I go to Reddit. I go to Google Reddit question that I have, and then I'll get some relevant answers. Reddit has started to embrace the whole AI revolution along these same kind of searchy type lines. It's reddit.com/answers. And I'm looking at it right now, and it says, got a question, ask it and get answers, perspectives, and recommendations from all of Reddit. One of the things on it just has a whole bunch of things like scrolling by tips for flying with a baby for the first time. And then I clicked on that, very much in the same sense as you would see with like a ChatGPT type answer. It gives you a bunch of different things, but importantly, it then says, this was generated from these posts, and it looks like this one has 12 specific posts that it pulled from, and it cites all of its sources of this is where this came from. This is the person who said this thing. Here's other subreddits you'd go to for more advice. And like, that's exactly what I wanted from most of Reddit, other than seeing a bunch of cute dog pictures or whatever. Like, I want to see funny stuff to just mindlessly scroll, or find what people had to say about a specific thing. And I think they just solved that second thing. They already had the first one on lockdown. Now I think because their search function still sucks, but now you can, instead of search for one thread to try and go through it and find the relevant answers, you can ask a large language model powered thing that has ingested all of Reddit and found the hopefully most relevant stuff for you.
So potentially you're no longer using Google to find those things. You're not going to Google and doing a site Reddit space, whatever.
Right. I would now go to reddit.com/answers. I haven't tried much of this yet. I just became aware of it being a thing. I think it's still in beta. It says beta. It is in beta. But like, that's a very cool thing. And I feel like any site where data is their secret sauce should have their own version of this.
Finishing out on Google, I give you $1 million to invest.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And you can either go long on Google or go short on Google, and it's going to be for the next year.
Is it Google, the search engine, Google, the company, or Alphabet, the holding parent company?
Of all of them, it's Google, the search engine. That's right, because Alphabet's multiple companies. So
I don't think it's going anywhere in a year.
I
wouldn't say it's like more.
But does the price go up or does the price go down, right? You can short it or long it. This isn't a bet on whether they exist. This is a bet on whether their market share.
Oh, we're not talking about the like potential legal fights going on right now where they might have to divest themselves of, I think, like Google the search engine, because there's enough volatility there. I don't know if I'd want to be taking any sort of year-long bet right now.
Yeah, well, it all feeds into it, but this is a free roll. I'm giving you $1 million. You get the profit. So you bet that they go long. If the stock is worth more at the end of the year, you get whatever the profit is. If you bet that they'll go short and the stock is down from where it is today, you'll get whatever the profit is. And if it happens to go the other way, you lose. I mean, you don't have to pay anything. It's a free roll. But where do you place your bet?
Once I realize any profits off this, I'm going to have a tax ramification. So like, it's not for nothing. You're giving me a tax burden with this, Hunter.
I am, but your tax burden is 40%.
Slightly bullish is what I would say.
Slightly bullish, okay.
I do think what you're describing is like Google as it is kind of broken, but we're very close to it, very likely being easier to work with and get what you actually wanted out of it.
So I agree with that, but there's one more insight which is why I'm not bullish. And what this large language model revolution has shown us is that someone can come out of a garage, kind of like how the Google folks came out. I guess they came out of Stanford, but they were really just working on a couple of servers, and they can come out with a real Google competitor. A small company can launch a product that is as compelling as the Google search engine. And that cat is out of the bag now. Like, again, everyone that's educated enough knows that and understands that. And maybe it hasn't happened quite yet, but it is possible. Before we thought it was impossible, no one's going to have the computational power to train on the entirety of the internet and build this. Like, that was their moat. And that moat is gone. And the latest example of that moat being gone is a new model. It's a Chinese company called, what's it called? DeepSeek.
Yeah. Or at least the model's called DeepSeek. I don't know if the company is.
The model's called DeepSeek. And this model on benchmarks is competitive with GPT-4o, and in some cases surpassing it, in some cases surpassing o1. These are being some of the latest and greatest OpenAI models. Which
I've been very impressed with DeepSeek from their first stuff.
Those models reportedly cost in the billions of dollars to train.
Yeah.
So $1,000 million. And DeepSeek was trained for $6 million. It was a small engineering team, and their budget was $6 million. And they have built a new model that is competitive with all those. Now, there's a monstrous asterisk on this. There's a monstrous asterisk on this.
What's that monster asterisk?
If you ask DeepSeek who you are, there's a good chance it's going to respond and say, I am ChatGPT.
I wonder why. Is it because it took a whole bunch of questions and asked them of ChatGPT to get high quality training data back?
Yes, that is exactly what they did, which is
gasp.
In giant violation of the terms of service of OpenAI. However, I don't think they really care. And this is something that we have seen from this country before, where they kind of just like, intellectual property rights. We're just building cool stuff. Really? We're building cool stuff. Okay. Get with the program.
Yep.
So that's a large part of how they did it. But what they've demonstrated is now the price has gone down to $6 million. I can make the argument that for $6 million, you can build a Google competitor, and the price is only going to go down. This is as expensive as it will ever be.
Right. We've said plenty of times this is as bad as it'll ever be. I do think that there's a lot of room for more efficiency when it comes to large language models. I've seen a bunch of articles out there that say it's not, you can get more from just more data, but you can also get a lot more from just better data. And in fact, with the kind of work that I've done for most of my career, if you give me 2,000 examples of really, really high quality data, that's worth so much more than 100 million bad ones. Now, something that's interesting about DeepSeek, it's not like Amazon or Google or Anthropic or Mistral or any of these other companies. They're a quantitative hedge fund. They're like not, they're in the AI game because they're making these models and releasing them, but this isn't like they're not an AI company. They're a hedge fund, which feels wild to, and I'm sure you can think of like why you would want a really powerful large language model to help power a whole bunch of the things that a hedge fund makes money from. But like still, you're talking about like that lack of a moat. It's to the point where you don't even have to be an AI company to make leading AI models.
This was their intern summer project.
Exactly. Some guy's senior thesis was unseat all of the highest powers of a multi-billion-dollar industry. Okay.
And
I just
just
accidentally did it.
Clear to the listeners, it's not just that this model was trained for such a small amount of money. It is also competitive in that it is one of the cheapest models to run. It is super fast. Wildly cheap. I saw an example.
Suspiciously cheap. I'm going to say actively suspiciously cheap because I know that these big models take a gajillion parameters. You know, it's just how much math at a time you have to like hold in a bunch of GPUs to like get it to run. And this, the latest model is a mixture of experts model, which means it has all of the parameters, only like a tenth of which are actually going at a time. That's efficient. That's great. We were just talking about efficiency. But the cost is so low that I'm wondering, is this being actively subsidized?
Could be. I was reading a post. Some guy was, he took... there's this database called the Edgar database, which has all of the SEC filings. So public companies have to file these things, I believe annually, and there's some things that are more than annually. And he was doing analysis on them, and so he downloaded them all, and he had a series of prompts to basically extract data from them. And he processed the entire Edgar database. It took over 6 million tokens, which is a lot if you don't know, and it was like a couple dollars. And it's also extremely fast, and it's like wildly multi-threaded in that it can sort of do it all at once. Yeah. Opposed to like you're just like waiting on something to finish. It's like, oh no, we can do it all simultaneously. It feels a little quantum-y in that regard.
It is really astonishing.
But you think it could be some smoke and mirrors at play?
Right. I mean, they could just be chopping it up into 5 pieces and running against 5 totally separate versions of the model. I do not have a DeepSeek enough understanding of like what is actually going on in the model to say where that efficiency and that parallelizing comes from. But what I will say is the large context sizes of like 1 million tokens, which let's call it a quarter of a million words is what you could kind of equate that to, which is a lot. Being able to say, hey, large language model, given all of this, now tell us something. There, you mentioned the SEC filings. Yes. There is a Python library that you can't use unless you pay a company money for it. Like you have to get an API key or whatever for it to say, here is a fairly substantial amount of money to be able to ask questions of SEC filings. They're donezo. That is their entire business model has now evaporated, because you can say, hey, SEC filing, which is deep and arcane and like weird, wildly nested things, utterly unreadable by a human in terms of like what you can download. Hey, shove that into a large language model. Tell me about it. Tell me this specific thing, insights, whatever. Boop, 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 boop. Done. Which is incredible. And I do admit a little bit scary, because that is, if not an actual loss of jobs, depending on who was employed at whatever company made that one library, it is definitely not more human jobs for that, but also like, I don't know, just processing information that exists. There's some disconnect for me here where I don't feel too bad about the fact that an LLM can read data and tell you about it, instead of me having to pay someone to be able to look through this arcane output to be told something about it.
In that similar realm, I was I work with various software engineers, and I was having this conversation with someone else, but I realize that people are using, and I'm sure it extends well beyond just software engineers. They're leveraging AI a lot for a lot of their work these days, and so I realize that like a lot of the stuff, the work product that I'm consuming and seeing is the output of AI, and most of it's pretty good.
Sure, right.
But there's something just like mildly unsettling about that. And it's sort of like, well, what was the human's role in it? It's just basically to babysit the AI, and they need to be smart enough and have enough knowledge that they can actually evaluate whether the output from the AI is good enough, to submit as work product.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah, there's something that's just like a little
weird and
like,
off. Right.
Something's
took you
not
an
quite
hour,
right.
and I know it would have taken like a week, and we are still paying you for all of that. And so I think that disconnect can be solved thusly. You're paying people for their expertise.
Yeah.
Which means that junior employees are in for a rough next few years. And like sub junior employees. But for someone like myself, like I've been using these various tools to make a website. I've talked about this a few times now, and I straight up don't know anything about front end. And it's been making the vast majority of this entire project, front end and back end. I understand the back end stuff a lot more. But I do feel occasionally like I'm becoming too reliant on it, or it's doing things that I don't really understand. And so sometimes I'll actually stop it and say, hey, this works. Please tell me why. I want to understand what was actually done here. And that babysitting that you're talking about, the thing where you're like, what am I actually kind of paying them for, is it. Now, granted, this is the worst it'll ever be. We'll always keep saying that. As the project becomes more complex, there's things that don't quite fit into the context window, or it's just too much. Or there's a complexity to the problem that it didn't quite grasp, or whatever. And right now, I'm finding that I am steering it and then helping with like debugging very specific issues. And it's the kind of like deeper knowledge that I did need to have that I don't think a Joe Schmo would be able to get past on their own. Where I think that like to use this in the truly force multiplier type way, you yourself do have to have that same level of like deep understanding to be able to use the tool to its fullest. And frankly, isn't that the same as using any tool? Some people can just use a table saw to cut a board in half. And then some people can do much more than that with it. And
perhaps we're all tools, at least until the day they become self-aware, and then we're not even tools anymore. But it was good up until that point. Right here on They Might Be Self-Aware, I think. I'm really not certain of anything anymore, except that another episode has come to an end for this week, but we will be back. And if you want to see that next episode, just like and subscribe, and it will magically appear in front of you through the virtues and magic of AI. You can probably find us if you Google us. I haven't tried. I don't know. Probably not. But I know where you can find us, which is on YouTube, owned by Google.
That's true.
Apple
and
Podcasts,
TikTok, owned by different. We were talking about DeepSeek, more Chinese.
Yeah,
company.
another Chinese company.
Yeah.
For at least another 15 days until the Supreme Court ruling comes into place.
We'll see.
Yeah, they have said that before.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are on TikTok. We've been growing on TikTok. We've been growing on YouTube. That's great to see. More engagement from our audience.
Favorite social platform. We occasionally put stuff up on LinkedIn.
This is true.
That's right. Engage with us there. A real social network that is worth interacting on.
Absolutely. Well, it's been great, Daniel.
Hunter,
and until
thank you
next
very
time,
much.
When we join together again for another episode of
They might be self-aware.